in the midst of a huge transformation where peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giuliano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Amy Yin. She is the founder and CEO of OfficeTogether. Good to see you, Amy. If you want to share a little bit about yourself, our listeners, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, hi, Christina. Thanks for having me on. I prefer she, her as my pronouns. When I was younger, there was a time that I wanted to be a doctor. And then as I got a little bit older, my dream in high school, it's going to sound a little silly, was that I really wanted to wear a suit and heels. That was what I wanted to be when I was older. And so when I actually entered college, I wanted to be an investment banker. And then I quickly fell in love with tech as a sophomore in college, and computer science has totally changed my world. And obviously now I'm running a software business. So I got very lucky that the college I went to just really put tech in your face in a very positive way. And I got to build a really strong community around that. So I guess I wanted to be someone who wore a suit and stuff. And in tech, I don't know if I actually achieved that, but I've actually probably exceeded what I wanted.
I mean, that's awesome, exceeding your dreams. And I always think it's an interesting question to think about when we were younger, where we pictured ourselves. Fast forward to today, you're a CEO and founder. I would love to ask from your perspective, what are qualitative and quantitative ways we can measure this dynamic thing of company culture?
Yeah, great topic. I think a lot about company culture because fundamentally, we're not going to be able to pay as much as a Google or a Facebook. And so people aren't coming to Office Together because of the compensation. They're trying to have a specific experience. And that's a lot around the people they're learning from and getting to work on something fun, young, and scrappy. So some of the things that we do is we actually do a monthly pulse survey. It's like very lightweight, 7 to 9 questions. We report on the results. We have action items. So it gives a sense of like where morale is across the company. One thing that I also look at is how much people are self-organizing and meeting outside of company-sponsored events. So we have a vibrant New York headquarters, and people have so much fun there. They have like a monthly company hot pot. People get lunch together on a regular basis, and they're excited to go to the office and committed to going to the office because they really enjoy seeing each other. So I look at how excited folks are to see each other and spend time together in person and connect with each other. And then I guess another measure of that is like how many meaningful relationships are being formed at work. So how many folks are actually friends outside the workplace, or I could really see being friends after things pass. I guess that brings me to another metric is we had 2 employees leave us last year, 2 teammates leave us last year, and they actually boomeranged. And so they left the company and then rejoined us. And I think that's a really strong way to show that we have something special that's worth coming back to. Absence actually makes the heart grow fonder. We're a little bit young to look at attrition, but some other companies look at attrition, like candidate close rates. We definitely look at demographics. So Office Together, I think we're 52% women, and then 67% women and underrepresented racial minorities. And then I also just this is a little bit more qualitative, but I love when we go have an offsite, just feeling people's energy and excitement. And so we do post offsite surveys, and people just had a blast, like a 100% positive sentiment towards the offsite. And so that made me feel like it was really worthwhile. We had about 12 of us go, and it cost $20,000, which is a lot of money for a startup, but it felt like a really, really good financial investment for us personally.
Absolutely. It's never too early to invest in kind of bringing people together, and also continually asking how people are feeling by doing the pulse surveys, as you mentioned, and also just measuring the energy, those meaningful connections. I definitely feel lucky that I have made kind of those meaningful connections at AllVoices and other employers as well, of just like those friendships inside and outside of work, those relationships. I think that in terms of company culture, you mentioned a variety of ways to measure this. And I think it is everybody's responsibility to really contribute to the company culture, how we're interacting with people day to day. What unique role do you think the CEO plays in creating a really best in class place to work?
I think it's one of my main responsibilities. So I think of like my job as hire and retain the best team, company vision, and then making sure there's cash in the bank. And I believe that we have to have the right team in place and kept in place in order for these other two things to flow. So there are like little things that I notice that come from the top. For example, we eat a lot of Asian food as a company because my favorite cuisine is Asian food, and we have a lot of folks who really love that. And then we don't do a lot of alcohol as a company. So for example, one of our customers, Brex, they have a very like strict like no alcohol rule because that's just not something they want as part of their company culture. But like one of the companies I worked at previously hired, happy hour was a big part of company culture. And it wasn't like people were like binge drinking, but it was like a part of the culture.
Right.
And so at my company, you know, we might have like a beer or two, but it's not a heavy drinking culture either. And so a lot of like what I like to do as a CEO happens at the company because we self-organize and we'll go see a Broadway play, or we did like a volunteer session last year, or we'll do like different types of like programs where we'll help like speak for like women in computer science groups or bring them together, have a diverse mentorship program for interns, because I was part of the internship programs that brought me in as an underrepresented person in tech when I was in college. So things like that are personally important to me and the bubbling down to the company. And that shows in the team, the diversity of the team, as well as in the product. So one of the things that OfficeTogether really cares about is putting employee connection front and center. And it shows because that's the company culture we care about, is that we want people to like be friends and develop meaningful relationships. And one thing I say to candidates when I'm recruiting them is, I hope that this will be the highest impact, fastest growth part of your career. And that's something we really aim to deliver on because everyone here is looking to have that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate how you brought up the candidate experience as well as a really important touch point for potential employees and really setting the standard early on, and those examples of how you intentionally create a really great company culture. It doesn't just happen because you have the best intentions, but also you are actioning on it, testing things, receiving that feedback. I know that OfficeTogether offers a desk reservation system and team scheduling platform for companies who really want to empower folks on their team, employees, through hybrid work. And a lot of organizations are leading into this hybrid model as well. From your perspective, can you give us an example of what empowerment looks like to you that's clearly not on the opposite extreme ends of micromanaging or leaving your employees out to dry, not supporting folks so they're not lost?
Yeah. So I think that hybrid work, right? We are a hybrid work experience platform. Hybrid work is a really strong way of empowering employees. And so hybrid can mean anything on the spectrum of your virtual first, you never have to be in the office, to there's some office attendance required, but not mandatory. And part of the way that, so I think that on one end, you could like be like, okay, here's like a WeWork, anyone can pop in whenever they feel like it. But there's something that can be empowering for some folks, depending on what their circumstances is. But a lot of times we see that employees want to go into the office to see their teammates and connect with each other. And so if you empower them with an office, but not a schedule, so they have no idea who's going to be in the office, they don't actually get to have the office experience that they want to have. And so some level of central coordination has to happen from the company to help understand, like, okay, actually, if you go in on Tuesday will be a happy hour and a guest speaker, and there's going to be 3.8x more attendance on Tuesdays than other days. So if you want to have the experience you want to have, we're telling you like, hey, here are the things you need to know to have the experience you want to have. And you might want to go on Monday if you don't want to be around any people because you want to have a totally quiet office. And so hybrid can be really empowering, but only if you're giving employees the communication and information they need to make the decisions about what their experience is going to be at the office that week or that month. So I think that there have been some folks who've gone really far in the direction of like, well, we don't want employees to ever feel like they have to go to the office, so we're not going to like let them see who else is going to be in the office. There's going to be no coordination, and the employees show up, the office is totally empty, and they're like, well, why didn't I just go to Starbucks? Like, why did I commute specifically to this office? So I think that that's like an example of how you can having a tool like a centralized calendar or a way for employees to get together is a way to empower employees, but let them choose the experience that they want to have.
Absolutely. I think it's that personalization at scale and also setting folks up for success in whatever way they can best complete their work and build those meaningful connections. We know that around 74% of US companies are using or planning to implement a permanent hybrid work model. And of course, I read other articles that say that hybrid work is the hardest to set up because of logistics and it's not a one size fits all approach. Do you agree that it's the hardest option for work? Why or why not?
Yeah, I think that hybrid is definitely much harder than fully remote or fully in office because it allows every person to figure out where they are in terms of their Pareto efficiency. So for like someone like myself, 1 day per week in the office is ideal. But for other people on my team, like 5 days in the office is ideal. But then how do you balance folks who want to have a really full office experience for folks who feel like they're most productive at home? And so it gets really complicated because now you're trying to match people's schedules, you're adding in travel and flights, and then you're asking questions of how much office space do I really need? And like, what is the purpose of the office? And so it's totally new terrain and everyone is figuring out real time. And we're in this massive experiment together, which has been really energizing for me. The other thing is that last year, hybrid work was mostly dominated by what COVID was dictating. It's like, oh, you need to do contact tracing, you have to take a health check, like you have to sit 2 desks apart. But this year, COVID is still there. You know, we have surpassed over 1 million deaths in the US. But for the folks who choose to be vaccinated, they're about as protected as they're ever going to get. And so COVID is less of the thing to manage. And now companies are shifting their attention to adoption, employee experience, and making sure employees actually connect. And they're finding new pain points than they found last year. Last year, they wanted to make sure that you could quickly notify if there was an exposure event. And this year, they're trying to make sure that employees can actually see the folks that are relevant to them and get them back in the office and deliver on a world-class hybrid experience. The other thing is hybrid is hard because humans are creatures of habit. We just spent 2 years working from home, not having to compute. There's a whole entire fashion that's been developed because of the pandemic of working your PJs, business on the top, party on the bottom, that people aren't used to going to the office. When we were at HR Transform, I remember I took a photo. There were just a bunch of speakers wearing sneakers and tennis shoes on stage. And that was like the new business casual. And so I think that is another element of like, okay, going into the office, you have to be able to disrupt your pattern of what you're doing. And you have to acknowledge that you might spend an hour commuting, but now you get to feel closer and more connected to your team and develop meaningful relationships. Studies show, Gallup poll show that employees who have a meaningful relationship at work are 700% more engaged. And those companies that foster these relationships are 12% more profitable. So there's a real business case for getting folks connecting and making friends at the office. It's also easier to leave a Slack workspace than to leave your friends. And so attrition, they say that attrition is up to 213% of that person's salary. And so if you lose an awesome partnerships person like yourself, Christina, that's going to actually cost AllVoice 213% of their salary in like replacement costs, lost productivity, and like whatnot. And so it is not easy to do hybrid, and everyone is trying something else, and the dust has still yet to settle. So I'm excited that OfficeTogether has been part of that story, writing those first few chapters with a bunch of leading companies.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely an exciting time and also an opportunity to look at business as usual and flip it on its head to say, okay, what do we really want to use the office space for? What do we want to ensure that we have so employees feel like they can do their best work as well? And the data doesn't lie. It's better for everyone as well in order to do work that is fulfilling and also feel connected to their coworkers. You mentioned kind of the comparison between last year and this year. Are there any other trends you're seeing or patterns with customers who have a hybrid workplace that you work with? One of the burning questions that I wanted to know was if a lot of folks were reserving the standing desks over the sitting desks, because in my office, I would always love to capitalize on these standing desks. But what patterns are you seeing?
You know, Christina, your back thanks you for choosing the standing desk. It's definitely much better for your body. So, you know, we're actually finding that the amenities, that's one thing, like going in for lunch is one thing, but it's really the people that drive other folks in. So employees are 10% more likely to go in and make a reservation if someone that they follow, like their friend or their teammate, is also going in to go that day. And so we really see folks that cluster together. The most popular days on the office tend to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Of course, different across different offices, but you know, those Sunday scaries mean that on Monday morning you might not want to commute, and then on Friday you don't want to commute either. So the middle of the week is the best time for collaboration. For my company personally, we collaborate on Wednesdays in person because Wednesdays are usually my no meetings days. And so it's a little bit quieter in the office and easier to just have more spontaneous conversation. And then we are seeing less than 10% of employees want to be in the office 5 days a week. So it's a really, really small percentage. Lastly, I will say that another pattern I'm seeing is that on days with events like happy hour, guest speaker, or whatnot, there's 3.8x more attendance than on regular days. And so events have become a huge investment priority for a lot of our clients.
Yeah, I think those are awesome kind of patterns to follow as well. And I think it's interesting that you can see kind of who's going into the office to your point as well. So you have that sense of community. There also have been lots of conversations around, you know, remote work and hybrid work in terms of mitigating bias and face time when you have kind of different schedules. What is your advice for people who really want to be intentional around mitigating that bias and creating those meaningful moments of connection in that hybrid work environment?
Yeah, there's a few things. One is the concept of a 9 to 5 is totally over. And that's something I personally had to adjust to. I remember seeing an employee leaving, coming into the office at noon or like leaving at like 3 p.m. And I'm having to readjust. I remember feeling like, oh, wow, that's like weird. And then I was like, oh, like we all work random hours. People are online later at night. Some people work really early in the morning. And so having to remind myself that when someone shows up or leaves the office is no longer a factor of how productive they are. And I wouldn't even know when they were logging in or logging out if they were fully remote. So that's one thing. And so we have, for example, multiple kids. Like I have my head of customer success picks up his kids in the middle of the workday. One of our employees, she has children too. So like the nanny schedule dictates when she can come to the office. So flexible scheduling has to be really important for the office to be successful. And we're seeing a lot of that. Like people aren't showing up in the mornings at 9 a.m. and leaving at 5 p.m. anymore. Like one of my employees, Sarah, that you met, she tends to come in at noon so she can miss the morning commute and the morning traffic. The other thing is it's really important that it's one Zoom, one computer. Getting audio right when some people are in the room and some people are remote is actually really tricky. And so we have to be really disciplined about making sure people are on their own separate computers. We still haven't quite figured out the audio setup, but making sure that the remote people can hear you just as well. Sometimes we even have people just, even if we're all together, but one person's remote, everyone just goes to a separate room to make sure the remote person can hear every person. And then also just planning a diversity of activities so that, like, for example, having morning activities, lunch activities, and evening activities so that parents aren't excluded from happy hours if everything is after work hour. But the young people aren't necessarily excluded from morning things because they're not going to be up so early. So I think that that's super important.
Yeah, a variety of activities and also making sure that you're being super intentional around the meetings you're conducting too. I appreciate those kind of best practices as well. We know that setting up the audio sometimes in conference rooms or just making sure everyone's on the same page can take time. So making sure that you are mitigating that ahead of time. Another question that I had as well is around how can organizations really identify what we like to call kind of hidden dangers, whether it's toxic managers or department misaligned goals or communication, and proactively find them by empowering employees to speak up, especially in a hybrid setting where I think, you know, trust takes a longer time to build, and you really want to make sure that you're building it from the start as well.
Yeah, well, I think if we were bigger, we would want to use a tool like AllVoices to report hidden dangers. Even though we're really small, we've identified one person who runs our ops as our HR manager, who takes care of all the HR things. And so there's always a person to report things to that's not the CEO. It's very important that people are not reporting things to me, because I know that I can't really be a safe space because I'm everyone's manager. So having someone who's specifically the HR manager, even if that's not her full-time job, has created some safety. We also do a lot with feedback loops and transparent communication. So I send out like a quarterly investment newsletter to my investors, but I send that to my whole team so people know where things are, what sentiment is like. We do the pulse surveys, and then we do this really fun activity called feedback circles, where we pair everyone up together for, I think it's 8 minutes. So you get 4 minutes to give and receive, or to give one piece of positive, one piece of constructive feedback, and then to receive that. And so we pair those with people across the company. It only takes an hour, and it's really fast feedback, and people feel so much closer after it. So that's been a really good way to bring up issues. And then lastly, we're doing a company all hands every 2 weeks. And this company all hands, we're actually going to break people up into breakout sessions to discuss our latest pulse results and empower employees to come up with ways that we can improve them. So that way we're building the company together.
Absolutely. Building the company together, I think that is so important, and offering those multiple avenues for feedback and building trust. And again, being transparent as well and sharing what that feedback is, and just a constant conversation there as well, especially as you continue to grow and add new team members. Amy, is there anything that I didn't ask during our time together today that you want to share with folks who are listening, or maybe underscoring, 1 or 2 key takeaways you hope people bring with them?
Yeah, I would say that even if you're fully remote or in a hybrid setting, reaching out and forming meaningful connections to your coworkers will last a lifetime. And the people that you work with, you want to keep working with when they're awesome. So, one of our company values is make it about the people. So I really encourage everyone to do that, because those friendships and relationships are going to allow you to do your best work, your most creative work, and create the environment in the workplace that you want to show up at.
Absolutely. Make it about the people, invest in those meaningful relationships. Amy, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great conversation.
Of course. And as a reminder for folks who are listening at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood. We know it's a requirement for the company to succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.